Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to break down this really powerful leadership framework called 5-star coaching. It's a tool that's designed to cut through all the noise and get you focused on what actually creates winning teams. And it works whether you're on a football field, in an office, or, hey, even in a classroom.
So first things first, let's talk about that title, because it's actually a pretty clever pun. You know, in the world of college sports, you've got these so-called gurus who rank high school players on a star system. But the thing is, coaches, they often find this whole thing super frustrating. Why? Because what they see on the inside, who's really going to make it, is often completely different from what these outsiders are saying.
And it's that very frustration, right? That feeling of you guys don't see the whole picture that led to this idea. They thought, okay, what if we made our own evaluation system? But here's the twist. It wasn't for the players. Nope. It was for the coaches, for the leaders. It was a way for them to look in the mirror and measure the things they could actually control.
And that system, well, that's what we're talking about today, 5-star coaching. Think of it like this. It's a tool, a really simple one that helps you zero in on the 5 most critical jobs of any leader, a coach, a manager, a teacher, you name it. And the cool part is, it shows you how getting each one right or wrong directly impacts how fast you get to the finish line. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We're going to walk through the 5 key pieces of this whole framework. First, we'll look at the foundation, which is all about who you're coaching. Then we'll get into the actual craft, the teaching and knowledge. And finally, we'll see how it all stacks up to build this pathway to excellence.
Okay, let's jump right in. The whole 5-star idea is really built on 5, let's call them pillars. And each one is an absolutely crucial, non-negotiable part of being a great leader.
So here they are. These are the 5 boxes we're going to unpack. It starts with recruiting and connecting, then moves on to being an expert and a master teacher, and it all leads up to becoming an elite coach. And what's really important to get is that each one builds on the one before.
So let's start at the beginning, with what is by far the most important piece of this whole puzzle, the people. Seriously, if you don't get this part right, if this foundation is shaky, everything else you try to do just gets so much harder. So, the first question you have to ask yourself is a big one. Are you getting the right people on the bus? The framework has this great term for it, OKGs, our kind of guys. And listen, this is not just about finding the most talented person. No way. It's about finding that magic combination of top-tier skill and the right character. Someone who just fits your system, your culture.
And this quote, man, it just nails what happens when you get that fit wrong. There's this story of a young coach who had this unbelievable player. On game day, he was a superstar, but Sunday through Friday, a total nightmare. By the end of the year, the coach said he was just worn out, and the team was too. That's the lesson right there. Talent without the right character is just a drain on everyone's energy.
Okay, so you've got the right people in the door? What's next? The next critical piece is connecting with them, building a real bond. And we're not talking about just being friends here. This is deeper. It's about creating a foundation of trust and commitment.
And this slide just lays out the difference so perfectly. On one hand, you have the buddy-buddy bond. You know what that is, right? It's where you're afraid to push people because you want to be friends, so the standards start to slip. That leads to a lack of respect. But on the other hand, you have a connection with an edge. Now that's the good stuff. That's where they know you care about them because you refuse to let them be anything less than their best. That's what builds real, lasting respect. All right, so you've got your foundation, the right people, and a strong connection. Now the focus shifts inward, to your own craft as a leader. This next part is all about what you know, and maybe even more important, how well you can pass that knowledge on to your team. I mean, it goes without saying, right? You have to be an expert. You got to know your stuff. But being a true expert, that's not just about thinking you have all the answers. It's about what this framework calls intellectual honesty. That means you have to be able to take your ego out of the equation, really look at different ideas and say, okay, what are the pros and cons here without immediately getting defensive about your own way of doing things? But here's a really, really important distinction. There's a huge gap between just being an expert and being a master teacher. See, an expert knows their subject cold. They can explain it, defend it. But a master teacher, they do something magical. They make other people want to learn it. They light a fire in you. And there's this great story about a head coach who wanted to crack the code on this. So he sat in on 9 different meetings with 9 different coaches over 9 days. And he noticed a pattern. The best ones, the master teachers, their meetings looked like this. They were super organized. They were the most energetic person in the room. They took really complicated ideas and made them feel simple, black and white. And they got everyone involved, from the rookie to the 10-year vet.
Okay, so this brings us to the final box, the last piece of the puzzle. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's about taking everything that happened in the classroom or the meeting room and actually turning it into skill, into performance, when the lights are on.
So what is an elite coach? It's someone who is a master at building two things at once, skill and confidence. And they do it using something called deliberate practice. This isn't just going through the motions. This is tough, focused, repetitive practice designed to build the exact skills you need in those do-or-die moments. But, and this is key, it's always done with a sense of compassion.
And man, one young coach learned this lesson in the toughest way possible. Picture this. It's 4th down, game on the line. He calls in the play. It fails. Game over. And as his quarterback is walking off the field, he just looks his coach right in the eye and says this. After stewing on that for a month, the coach had this huge realization. The player was 100% right. The play had no chance. Not because it was a bad play, but because he hadn't done the work in practice. He hadn't built the skill through endless reps, and he hadn't built the confidence in his player to believe they could pull it off under pressure.
So, we've looked at all 5 boxes: recruiting, connecting, expert, master teacher, and elite coach. Now, what happens when we put it all together? Well, you start to see a really clear map of what it takes to get to the top.
When you stack them up, they create what's called the performance pathway. And I want you to think of this as more than just a list. It's a visual for the whole journey. And the length of this path, that represents the one thing none of us can get more of: time. It's the time it takes to get to where you want to go.
Now, look closely at how this is drawn. It's on purpose. See how those first 2 boxes, recruiting and connecting, are way bigger than the others? That's not an accident. That's the whole point. They are the foundation. If you want to speed up your timeline to success, getting the right people and connecting with them is absolutely the most important thing you can do. It's the biggest lever you have.
And here's the flip side. If you're weak in any one of these areas, you create a gap. And a gap in your performance pathway means one thing: you're adding time to your journey. You're slowing everything down. And in any competitive world, whether it's sports or business, that's time you just can't afford to lose.
But you know, the beauty of this whole thing is its simplicity. That's what the creator of this says. It's not supposed to be rocket science. An effective tool should be simple. It's just meant to be this lens that helps you cut through all the noise and focus your energy on the 5 things that are actually going to move the needle.
So yeah, this whole thing started in football, but you can see how it applies to pretty much anything, right? Leading a company, teaching a class, even raising a family. These 5 boxes are universal. So I guess the question to leave you with is this: what does your performance pathway look like? Where are your gaps? And which box is the most important one for you to start working on right now?